Okay, good morning. Today is the Yod site of Beth Porter Bracha Chana Bar Mordechai David. So we'll learn in her schus, and please God, Neshama should have an aliyah through the learning of our Torah and in the merit of it's not only the learning of the Torah itself. We have to remember that it's the Torah that we learn and the things that we do as a result of that. It's a constant schus. So it's not just a static schus in a way. It's a constant schus, and please God, it should hold her in good stead. So right. We go into one more step closer to Rosh Hashanah. Nitzavim is always the closest to Rosh Hashanah. Quick parsha and beautiful parsha. Let's try and understand a little bit about it. So the Torah describes how Atem Nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. You're standing there. We're all standing there before Hashem. Everybody, the Roshechem, Shiftachem, Ziknechem, Shotrechem, Kol Yisrael. Everybody is standing there together with the children and the women and even the Gerim. Everybody is there. While to pass over through the breath, through this covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. Why? What's the purpose of the covenant? In order that He will make us into His nation, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be our King, our God, as He's told us. And it's not only as He told us, but also He told our forefathers, Avraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, that this is what's going to go. This is what's going to happen. So we are Am Yisrael at this point is standing, ready to go into the land of Israel, to be part of this covenant. But it's not a covenant that is a new covenant. It's really a covenant, a brit that started with HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to Avraham, then to Yitzchak, then to Yaakov. So it's a covenant that has an enormous amount of history. And then the Torah says, I was not only giving it to you, this generation that's standing, that's about to go into Eretz Yisrael, but rather, it says that's not only with those that are here today, but also those that are not yet here today. And it's on that the Mefarshim try to understand what is this asher enenu po imanu hayom, those that are not here with today. So Rashi says, "Va'af im dorot atidim liot," that this covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making with Bnei Israel as they're about to pass over, it's a covenant that comes from Avraham, Isaac, and Yaakov from the past, is also a brit that is going to be the af im dorot atidim liot, even with the generations that in the future are going to come. So it's amazing because we are standing here in 2021, 5781, about to go into 5782, and this bris actually applies to us as well. And at the point in time in which they were standing there, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, he could easily see the future, and He's expecting Bnei Israel to see that we are standing here thousands of years later, also being part of this bris, being part of this covenant. And if that's the case, we need to understand, how can it be that Bnei Israel can stand thousands of years ago and obligate us, their children, their great-great-great-grandchildren? How does that work? So we know that over history, there have been times in which Bnei Israel have accepted the Torah in a new way. The most obvious one is in Purim, where the Megillah says, Kimu v'kiblu, that they re-accepted the Yehudim, the Jews, to take on the entire Torah, and of course to take on the reading of the Megillah and all the mitzvahs in the Megillah. And that really sets us a tone that we need to understand that this concept of the one generation taking it on for the next generation. In fact, all the laws of the Rabbanan laws are like that. The generation at that point in time takes them on, and for all generations going forward. Then the question is, how can that happen? How can it be that that those that come before us can take on for us to be ultimately lanetzach for all generations forever? And says the Malbim, and the Malbim is unbelievable because he unlike Rashi. I mean, Rashi says in a few words what the Malbim is saying, but the Malbim explains how it works. So the Malbim says the following. He says that Kol HaNeshamot, all the neshamas, ha'atidot liyot begufei b'nei Yisrael, that every single neshama, it's geschmackless, right? Every single neshama that would ultimately come into the body of a Yid, of a Jew, hayu b'mamad brit ha'chorev, of a brit arvot moav, that those neshamas were at Har Sinai and also at the covenants that were made, the brit that was made in Arvot Moav, at Har Grizim and Har Eva. V'kiblu liyot shomrim haTorah. Those neshamas, not the bodies, the neshamas, they took on themselves to keep the Torah. He says, how can that be? The neshama can't keep the Torah without a body. He says, no. He says, you have to understand. He says the body, not only the bodies at that time, not the people that were alive, but the neshamas that were intrinsic within the people took on this covenant. He says, we understand that everything, that these neshamas, the spiritual force fills the world forever. And so too those neshamas in the human being fill us even from those times. And he says that we have to understand that even though there's no connection to the physical body that of us to those people that were standing at Har Sinai and those people that were standing in the Arvot Moav, nonetheless we need to understand that the neshamas took them on. And because the neshamas took them on, therefore it carries on for all durot, for all generations. And then he says, let's try and understand how that works. So the first thing we understand is that a neshama is something that continues forever. And since the neshama continues forever, number one, it's able to take on through generations that which it promised in generations before. So that's a definite discussion at some point in time in a very expanded shir on the understanding of how the neshamas, there's this Gilgul on neshama, that the neshama revolves from one generation to the next within a different body. That's the first understanding. But says the Malbim, something we have to understand. How can the thousands of years ago take on for us today? It says it's simple, that we understand that a parent cannot take on something for a child if it's obligatory on the child. I can't say that I am going to when my child becomes 15, that he's going to adhere to the Torah as I'd like him to. Please God, he will. Please God, but that's part of my education process, is to instill within him a love and a warmth and a desire to keep Torah. But I can't obligate him to do that. That's why at a bar mitzvah and a bat mitzvah, we say the bracha of Baruch Shepeterani, that we say, Hashem, you've given, you parted me, you've exempt me now from any further punishments on this child, because now that child has reached the age where he or she is at the age of maturity, and therefore I no longer have to take on their stuff. However, whilst I can't take on their obligations and force them to obligate things, what I can do, and this is the halacha. The halacha is that if a person is able to do something which for somebody else's benefit, even though they're not there at the time, they're able to do that. We can do something that will be a schut for somebody, even though that person doesn't know about it. So, for example, if a person leaves their tefillin in shul, and I arrive in shul and I realize that I haven't got my tefillin, so am I allowed to use somebody else's tefillin, even if they don't know about it, even if I didn't ask them? So the answer is yes, I can, because I can be zachin la'adam shelo lefanav. I can give a person schus, they're getting a schus, the merit that I'm using their tefillin, even though they're not around. So too, says the Malbim, it applies with the in this case. For something that's a schus, that's a great merit, for sure, a parent can take that on for his children. And therefore, earlier on, right at the time of Matan Torah and the time of all these continued Brit at Arvei Moav, in the fields of Moav and all the other places, that our great-great-grandparents, our ascendants were able to take on Torah for us, Why? Mipnei shehaTorah hi rak leshayeret hamidot lahadrich b'derech yishara shelo yishtaka b'tavot hagashmiot. He says because the Torah is there just to ensure that we have the right midot and that we go upon the straight road and not get totally embedded and immersed in tavot hagashmiot, in the material desires. And the whole purpose of the Torah is to give us the ability to complete the tachlis, the essence of how we were created in this world. And so if that's the case, therefore, there's no issue with a parent being able to take on things that will benefit their child in the future. That's why, by the way, if we think about it carefully, how can a parent bris a child, give a child a bris? That the world today is saying that it's such a terrible, terrible thing that we maiming and whatever the case is, because we understand that it's not a negative, it's a pure positive. It brings them into the bris Hashem and gives them a focus on what their life should be. So that's so therefore we understand that a parent of thousands of years ago can take it for all generations going forward. And finally, says the Malbim, you know why? You know why they could take it on for us living here in 2021 when they were there thousands of years ago? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created all the reality in this world and brought all the neshamas into this world. And at the end of the day, everything is in his hands. And if he would remove himself for 1 second, the whole creation would be nothing, absolutely nothing. And if he says something, he says, and if that's the case, if Hashem creates the world and if he removes himself, then the whole world will come to nothing. So what? Does he need the permission of the person that he tells? Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't need permission. We can work out that it works out, in the right way. But at the end of the day, that we, he says, in an abrit v'kabbalat Yisrael HaTorah lo mipnei shayu yocholim la'akev ela mipnei shechevetz Hashem lizkutam. At the end of the day, the reason why we have to take it on is because our HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give us the schus, the merit of being able to be part of this powerful destiny of the people of Israel. And therefore he said to them, standing while they're standing there, about to go into the land of Israel, he said, you have to understand that all these things must be rooted also not in your generation, but also into the generations that come. Because why? Because the image of people who understand that they have to take this forward not only for themselves but for future generations is the thing that sticks in the mind of the future generations and of the children thereof. And I suppose that one of the things that therefore we have to understand from here is a number of things. Number one is that our neshamas are a continuation of a process that goes back thousands of years. Number two is that we need to remember that when we bring a child into a Torah environment, when we bring our child up in a Torah home, when we bring a child the Torah and mitzvot, what we're doing is what we are doing is we're giving them schut, we're giving them incredible merit to be part of Am Yisrael. And therefore, really what it is that we have to show them that it's a schus. It's not just about what you can do and what you can't do, but it's being part of something so much greater, of being part of the world, of the creator of the universe. And finally, ultimately, why do we do it? We do it because Hashem says we must do it. Because at the end of the day, Kodesh Baruch Hu is the master of the world, and without him, there would be nothing. And so he told us that we've got to take this thing, this unbelievable gift that we have, and pass it not only from our generation to the next, but as Rashi said, until the end of all generations. Please God, we should be zocher to send these messages to our children, to our children's children. And of course, the way we do it is by finding them the meaning and the depth of that within ourselves. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Please God, the neshama of Bracha Chana, Bas Mordechai David should continue to